you need to pick up the phone and find out who your top OEM and SIs are that you
Yes.
spend millions and millions and millions of dollars with every year, potentially,
Yeah. Yep.
that are responsible for the design and support and maintenance and warranty of your control systems and the machine centers out there, and find out what they're doing from a cybersecurity perspective. What is
Right.
your roadmap, CISO, CIO, that you're wanting to implement? And then you have to bring these folks in. You got to talk to them. Right?
Yeah.
Your plant people know who they are.
Oh, for sure.
Welcome to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. In each episode, we dive into the world of industrial cybersecurity. Join us as we cover the latest trends, innovations, and practical insights as we talk with leaders and practitioners across the industry. Gear up and let's get into this week's episode.
Hi, I'm Dino Busalaki.
And I'm Craig Duckworth. Welcome to the podcast today. What do you got on your mind today, Dino? What are you thinking?
I think we ought to talk a little bit about this recent Gartner report that came out, the article they published about the number of IT cybersecurity jobs that folks are leaving. Like 25% will be leaving the field over the next year or two. Crazy.
That's a big number. I think that'd be a great topic. As we go through this, how does that work into the OT space that we play? What's the repercussions or the ramifications of leadership that's leaving and moving around, and the turnover and let's call it the ramp up time for new organizations they go into in the same field, and maybe the loss of productivity around that entire churn and burn cycle.
Yeah. Well, and the tenure of CISOs we've known for years is the turnover rate. I mean, is pretty high. What's their tenure? It's less than 2 years.
Yeah.
Maybe in the job.
Yep.
So why is that? And obviously the article touches on a lot of that stuff, but just the idea that, to me, that means that the CISOs probably don't have the level of influence that they need to have within the organization to really make some real hard changes within the environment. It's like you don't want to equate it to what's going on with the federal government, right, at the DOGE level. But at the same point, you've got these environments that are slow to change in the realm of cybersecurity and the improper investments. And it's already hard to find talent, right?
Oh, very hard.
Right.
Well, you got the talent piece. You've got, what's the level of support within the organization? Do you have the support you need from your team, from your executive leadership? And I would say that I'm starting to see a little longer tenure as organizations are becoming more and more mature, as they are beginning to embrace the role of a CISO and trying to keep them there. Maybe that it plays into this turnover that we're seeing, where they take one step forward, CISO leaves, they take 2 steps back. Maybe they're trying to keep it going a little longer and give them more, let's call it rope, maybe not to hang themselves, but a little more rope to do their job. I don't know.
Yeah. In larger organizations, you think about the role of the CISO, and especially when it comes to OT cybersecurity. And if you don't have the background or experience for it, and a really good understanding of how those plants operate, and the type of control systems they have and their processes, and the skill sets that are within those facilities, especially at an engineering level, process level, facilities, production, it's almost like you think that there should be an OT cybersecurity role, which we've seen a lot of clients set up. There are OT cybersecurity positions that are being developed as roles within these companies. Who they report to can vary, but at the same time, it's back to that think globally, act locally mindset that you have to have in order to be successful, because the level of technology around these control systems that are used in these plants vary greatly. It's not like they're highly standardized as far as the control systems, specifically the software to run the SCADA systems or the DCS or the motor control centers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
It's hard for IT to wrap their mind around what's going on out there. And at the same time, OT people aren't thinking about cybersecurity as being their role and responsibility.
Well, it goes back to, and we say this every time, it's who owns the assets in the IT infrastructure. Look, I would say very consistent. They may say, we want Cisco switching and hardware throughout our infrastructure. We settle on Palo Alto firewalls throughout our infrastructure. We leverage Juniper Mist from an AP access point throughout our infrastructure, or whatever the technology is. In the OT manufacturing space, if they've got 10 plants, they've got 11 variations amongst those 10 plants, because even if they were to have a standard and a template that they use to make those, they're all different based on the OEMs, the manufacturers, who's brought technology in, what they're using, what they as an OEM settled on that was interjected into that. Maybe one area is running Rockwell, one area is running Siemens, maybe they've got an Emerson piece over there. There's not consistency, and it will vary by plant. And that's not something that IT is accustomed to very often.
Well, and in all fairness, when those machine centers were developed and designed, IT didn't have a role. They weren't invited to the table, I guess is what I'm trying to say, meaning that here you're going to put in a new $20 million packaging line. It's going to take a year or two to get this thing in and done. And as you're starting the front end engineering design phase and you're building out what the client's asking for and scoping it, there's not a conversation with the IT leadership on what's the network going to be like within those control systems at the control level, right? We're not talking about what is the IT network. We're talking about the control network and the types of PLCs and the software that's installed in those PLCs, i.e. the firmware or the SCADA system, picking Rockwell versus inductive automation versus going maybe with a GE line of product or whatever. Those decisions are not normally made with IT's participation. So they're already on the outside looking in. And I'm not saying that that's right. It's just that that's what we witness. I mean, our company alone rarely has IT leadership sitting in a large plant build in regards to the process side of the house.
I equate it to Thanksgiving dinner. The OT team has always sat at the kids' table. And as they are growing up and maturing, they are being invited to the adults' table where they can have these conversations because it's becoming more relevant. It's important as the leadership, the mom, the dad, the aunts, and the uncles listen to the children, the manufacturing that are growing up, maturing, and having relevant conversations about here's what we do and why it's important.
Well, you said the OT people were sitting at the kids' table?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, just remember who generates the revenue.
Right? I know who generates the revenue.
IT.
So no, for sure. It's cost center versus cost generation.
Table, you just have to determine which one it is. But yeah, because some of them carry a bigger stick than others, right? We've seen that too.
Yes.
To your point. And what's best is having those two groups aligned and collaborative and transparent. Is the best of both worlds. We're working in sync and quite frankly, recognize where you are short on resources to really get to where you need to be.
We hear it all the time. I got a great dose of that this week. I was at a client. I hear direct from the client team that's managing their control space. They're kind of their IT support and the plant manager about, look, anything that we do that impacts our production, meaning unscheduled, unplanned downtime, is a financial hit to them personally and to their budget, their revenue, what their commitments are to the organization. And there's still a high level of, let's call it reluctancy and uncertainty about what's being asked because of the unknown of what it's going to do and the implications it can have to them and their own personal financial well-being. So it's still there.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, especially with the OEMs who can be very difficult on allowing you to add things into that machine center that are beneficial from a cybersecurity and or safety perspective and getting them to sign off on that without voiding the warranty for support. Yeah. That is a balance. And the OT teams have become accustomed to relying on that OEM to fix that machine or determine, what's going on wrong with it in a very expedited fashion. To your point, got to get back up and running because it's costing money when that machine's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. And IT is usually not tied to that. A lot of times they don't want to be tied to that. Right. In all honesty, because of the critical nature of what's going on inside that plant with those machine centers, right?
Yeah, for sure. If you go back and you look at that Gartner report that we started with, and you look at the turnover rate, and you look at how does that play into the already talent shortage that's in the space that we're operating in, it really goes back to choose a partner, choose a
service provider, right?
A service provider that can walk with you down this road, that can provide these services that you trust, that understands your environment, that is competent, that can help you address risk address unscheduled, unplanned downtime, help you build budgets for these tools, give you options for what's available that's purpose-built, unique for the environment you're looking at, and can really bridge that gap between the IT and the OT side and help both sides understand the why behind what the organization is trying to do.
Yeah. All good stuff. Like I said, if this gap is true, what Gartner is saying, these organizations are going to be, I don't want to use the word forced, but they're going to be pushed over into looking for managed service organizations to help them out. People who want to work in this space as cybersecurity professionals, but want to work for organizations that treat it as a priority.
Right.
And that's why I think a lot of the CISOs that we see, the turnover rate is if it's not a priority to the organization,
then they're not getting the support. They're not getting the funding. They're not getting any
crap to dry either. They don't want the fingers pointed at them if something bad happens, because you wouldn't implement this policy or this procedure or put the budget together to look for technologies and solutions or partners to really shore up these gaps that we got. I mean, the CISO has to recognize where those gaps are. But at the same time, if they're not able to influence, the executive leadership in investing appropriately and properly, that I can see why they want to move on, because they don't want to be the one hanging on the nail if something bad happens.
Well, but a lot of times, if, for example, if I'm a CISO and I make my case, I build a plan and a budget, and I talk to my executive leadership, the CEO, and he says, "Hey, Craig, that's a great idea. Come with me next month and let's present this to the board." The board says, "It's a great idea. Here's X amount of money, $5 million, pick a number, whatever it is. Go implement that." Again, it gets back down to how far can they go if it's incorporating their OT space before they kind of get, let's call it kneecapped, and it gets stopped and delayed because they don't have the buy-off of the plant management. They don't have the buy-off of the controls engineers to go in and do whatever it is they're trying to do in that space that the IT teams are not familiar with. And then the budget is overrun, the timeline is delayed, and then next quarter, next year, the CISO is saying, "Hey, well, I know you gave me this money and I'm not getting as far as I thought, so I need more money." And then where does that process stop?
Well, it's the value, right? Somebody's got to want to show them the value.
Yeah.
Especially those that have invested in tools to go down this path, specifically OT cybersecurity. But at the same time, that OT ecosystems needs to demonstrate why having this information, even if you just looked at the 5 SANS critical controls, defensible architecture, incident response, vulnerability management, remote access. I'm probably missing one of them. So
On recover. Yep.
Yeah. So what is your plan around that from an OT perspective so that we recognize that if the client isn't really generating a strategy around cybersecurity, then the OT teams need to bring that to the table. They need to demonstrate that we see value in it. And here's the reasons why we see value in it. You should also, client, see this because we need this as part of the work that we're doing for you. Right. I'm building this packaging line for you. I got a tight time startup. I got to get this machine up and running within a year. And we start building it out. And I need to know what can impact or is impacting my ability to do that and what risks are associated within that environment, not only with the stuff that I'm bringing in, but the stuff that's already in your plant. Right. I want to know if you got malware in your plant. I want to know what the remote access looks like in there. I want to know, what IT is doing in regards to doing their due diligence, but what impact it may have on my control systems that I'm programming and setting up for you. So there has to be a two-way conversation. And right now we don't see that.
Well,
and the OT organization needs to say, here's why I'm asking for this, or here's why I'm bringing these tools in, and here's the value and benefit of having this information and this technology and within this environment.
Well, and part of it, Dino, is you brought up a great question. We see malware in this environment. And I know we've gone in, we've implemented a tool or technology, and within 30 minutes, we find malware in that OT environment, either sitting on a backup or sitting on a device or sitting somewhere. And when we ask the OT teams, "Hey, wait a minute, let's pause a second. Here, we found this malware active in your environment. What do we need to do to address this right now?" And I know the response is, "It's not our problem. We have no idea. We don't know who to ask. We don't know what to do. It's not our issue. And please proceed with what you're doing." We're like, well, hey, that has to be important to someone. There is someone in that organization that would say, "Wait a minute, stop, step back. We need to do steps 1 through 5. We need to do these things to remove, eradicate, fix that issue before we get too far. But they just don't know. It's the right hand doesn't understand what the left hand is doing, and neither of them are talking to each other.
They get that deer in the headlight look, right? When that happens. And to Craig's point, for our listening audience, if we go into 10 facilities, we're going to find malware in 2 of them. We're going to find rogue assets in all of them.
Yes.
Right? That's speaking from experience and been doing this for many, many years. That's just the nature of the beast, right? And we uncover this stuff that's new information, not only to the IT, who wasn't paying that close attention anyway with the control system environment, but even the plant people are surprised by some of the things that are found in their environment that they didn't know was there, didn't believe that it was there, don't know why it's there, but we're finding this stuff. Again, rogue assets in every plant, remote access in every plant, warranted or unwarranted, that's being uncovered. At malware, sometimes. A lot of misconfigurations. We uncover misconfigured assets, the way that they're communicating. So whether it's at the switch level or at the firewall level, or even some module that they're using to talk between control systems, whether it be ProSoft or some pyramid integrator, which is going back a number of years, but there's technologies out there that span decades. These OT assets are out there for a while. Their life cycle is much different than in the IT space. So you have to, again, think globally, but you got to act locally for all these reasons we're describing here.
Yeah. I look back and I say, okay, how can I, as a systems integrator or a consultant that understands OT and understands these tools and technologies, go in and provide value, provide something to an organization to help them? And I pull this back around to the CISO leaving, and this 25% are getting a new job and they're all moving around. And how does that play? And part of it is they don't understand the makeup of that OT environment. They don't recognize, and some of them probably very well do recognize, but not all of them. High level, but they don't realize that there are multiple layers of networks underneath that top level PLC that they're not seeing because of the NIC cards that are in those devices, where OT
control side.
OT for a very long time has used those as network segmentation devices to keep IT out of their hair. Let's just call it what it is, because of the inherent distrust. And when a CISO or an executive walks down on that plant floor with an OT team lead, controls engineer, myself, or someone equivalent to me, and they say, hey, this Windows 7 machine that's running this is connected to your network. They're like, well, why is it on my network? Well, because it's managing this asset, this packaging line, this process cell, whatever it is. Well, take it off. You do know that that's going to shut your plant down. I can turn it off, but my production is going to stop, and you're going to have to report to the CEO why we stopped production.
Which
is never, ever going to happen. No, but they don't understand
that they're going to take that machine off on the recommendation of the CISO to shut down a plant. They're not going to do that.
The plant's not going to do it. They're
never going to pivot, right? Then you got to pivot to, well, how do I micro-segment that thing? How do I put virtual patching around it? There's a lot of strategies that can be used in order to deal with that. And that's where the IT teams are at a loss on what it would take, again, to secure and protect those connected physical systems. And when we say connected physical systems, we're talking about data driving physical outcomes. Yes. That is purely in the hands of the OT organization to deal with that, because they're the ones that are most intimately knowledgeable of that machine operation. They may not know everything that's going on within that infrastructure and that network per se, but what they do know is what it takes to run that machine.
And they're all working. They've all got full-time jobs. They've got 10 tasks, and they're working as much as they physically can and doing everything to the best of their ability. And the last thing they want is to try and take on something that, one, is designed to give someone outside of them an outcome that's not relevant to them, that they don't believe. And then they may or may not understand the why behind it. Back to that localization and OT adoption that we talk about. How do you help get organizational OT sides to understand the why? What's the benefit to them as a team, and what's the value? tell me, InfoSec team, what data do you need that I can give you so you stop scanning my network and killing my PLCs every time? Just tell me what you want. I'll get it to you in a different fashion, but please stop doing what you're doing because of the implications it has. But if they don't understand the why, if it's just because I was told to, as a kid, that was the worst answer in the world. Hey, Craig, do this. Why? Because I said to. But that does not work for me.
Well, and you got to show it to them, right? You got to demonstrate the
Yeah.
impact. And if you don't have the right tools and technology in there, that's hard to do. That's where we get back to the ghost in the machine. I don't know why my fillers slowed down or stopped. It
Right.
just did it. And by the time we cleaned up the mess and reset everything and got QA to give us a thumbs up to run again, I've lost 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I haven't been able to attach that downtime to anything specific that's popping out at me. If I can't find a mechanical issue, a motor burning up or the filler injector getting clogged up or whatever, if I can't point to that, all I want to do is get back up and running. I'm not really going back to try to figure out the why, especially if I don't have something there that's collecting information. Tell me the why.
Correct.
And if I go to IT is going to tell you, we didn't do anything. Right?
But these tools and technologies are going to give them that information through the OT side. They're going to say, "Oop, here was a scan, and here's what it did, and here's the IP address of the IT laptop that kicked this off or whatever it was." So now they know, and it goes back to what we say all the time. We are being marriage counselors between the two teams to help understand that. Again, to have a conversation. Hey, I see that you did this. Just so you know, here's what it did to my environment and my cost of downtime because you did that. Tell me what you were trying to get, and let me give it to you.
Well, classic example, we witness this now. As a system integrator, we don't design in EDR tool sets into the SCADA applications. And there's a reason for that. Somebody has to manage that EDR package. And that EDR package can be very, very disruptive based on what kind of controls are being placed in a SentinelOne or a CrowdStrike type install in my HMI environment. Somebody has to manage that. And again, thinking globally versus acting locally, because to your point, IT will come in and say, oh, we got a compute infrastructure out there. It's got all these VMs on it. Let's implement CrowdStrike. Yep. OT doesn't weigh in on that per se. IT just did it. Then you have a security program, antivirus program sitting out there running in these HMIs that are critical to the process. That when they fire off their scans or their updates that they receive, all of a sudden that HMI is becoming distracted. It's not communicating with the machines like the PLCs in a more timely manner. And those machines, if they lose communications for a period of time, even a short, very, very short period of time, they will fault. They will go safe. Because if they can't be communicated with in a proper time or didn't get their instructions at the right time, they will take a different action. Right. And of course, the unforced error there is you end up with an unplanned, unscheduled downtime event. So you want to be able to track that through. And again, that's where IT and OT aren't working well together when IT just automatically pushes down an EDR package onto a compute infrastructure in a manufacturing facility because they want to add AV and other cybersecurity functionality into that environment.
Right.
Really testing it against the SCADA applications that are in there running because it's timing is important. You need to know when might be downtime in that area in order for you to run what you need to run from that EDR package and get your input back from that. You don't want to do it during run times. You don't want to do certain changeovers or critical steps in the process. You don't want that EDR package firing off and running, doing what it's doing.
Right. No, totally agree.
And you got to tie that back to certain communication flows, which ones are warranted versus which ones are unwarranted. Because those EDR packages see things they don't recognize sometimes with these industrial protocols, and they will prevent it from running.
Yeah, great. Totally get it. Hopefully the audience understood and can kind of take some feedback from this, go back within their organizations, understand kind of where they are, ask some questions. Walk down on the plant floor, pick up the phone if you're a CISO or a CIO and call the plant manager or call your director or VP of engineering. Take a tour and say, hey, help me understand the business unit, what you're doing and the implications of some of the things that we're doing. Here's what we're thinking. How would that impact you and your team from an operations? And start having some collaboration. It's got to start somewhere.
Well, yeah, and CIO, you need to pick up the phone and find out who your top OEM and SIs are that you
Yes.
spend millions and millions and millions of dollars with every year, potentially,
Yeah. Yep.
that are responsible for the design and support and maintenance and warranty of your control systems and the machine centers out there, and find out what they're doing from a cybersecurity perspective. What is
Right.
your roadmap, CISO, CIO, that you're wanting to implement? And then you have to bring these folks in. You got to talk to them.
Yeah.
Right? Your plant people know who they are.
Oh,
And
for sure.
you'll find them if you look in your payment system, the companies that you're spending, like I said, big dollars with, who are responsible for that equipment in your manufacturing facilities.
Right.
You need to have a relationship with them to some extent. You should be pursuing that. And if you're not interested in doing that, then there needs to be somebody that steps in to take that role.
Yep. Totally agreed. Great conversation, Dino. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time as always. You guys have a great day out there. And remember, stay safe.
Happy Friday.
Yep.
Thanks for tuning in to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. To stay up to date with our latest episodes, be sure to click the follow or subscribe button now. And if you found this podcast helpful or have a topic you'd like us to discuss, please leave us a review or let us know. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.